The last chapter here, solving radical equations. Before we do that, it's worth just going over briefly what these radicals look like. The square root of x. The square root of x, I'm just going to, unfortunately, somewhat power through this, but we did learn that y equals x squared. That starts here, goes over 1, up 1, over 1, up 3, over 1, up 1, over 1, up 3, and we got this shape. Now the square root of x is what we have to graph now, and that is simply this drawing pushed over. So the drawing would be like this, just pushed right over. However, and we haven't got into this yet, that is something that is not a function. A function is something that has, for every input, has exactly one output. And in this case, it has two outputs. What I mean by that is if I looked over here when x is 3, I see, oh, I have an output up here and I have an output down here, which is why this doesn't work. So when we graph the square root functions, it's pushed over, but we only do the top. So we go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 3, up 1 over 5. And we get this sort of shape. So that's what we're doing here. So sketch the following graphs. So y equals the square root of x. This is the base function, so you start at 0, 0. And then every time we're going to go up 1 over 1. Up 1, 1, 2, 3. And then up 1 over 5, and I'm off the graph, so we just have something that looks like that. In grade 12, we will go over how we transform this, and we'll do a lot more of this. But this is just a start, a hint of what these things look like. Now this graph right here, the square root of x, it's going to look like exactly like this. However, it says plus 2. Now, I'm letting you know, I'm just stating that if you add a plus 2 on the outside, that moves things up or down. In this case, a plus would mean move up. Versus having the plus happen inside of the square root. So this is inside the square root, this 2 is being plussed, as opposed to here where it's outside of the root symbol. And so because this is outside, that means we're going to move this thing up. So if it's positive, we'll move it up, and if it's negative, we'll move it down. This says plus 2. So that means we're going to, instead of starting at 0, 0, we're going to go up 2. We're going to start up by 2. And then from there, you can go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 3, up 1 over 5, which we don't have. That's off the graph. And so this is what our graph looks like. Now this is on the inside of the square root. And I would think that if you were adding something, that would move it right. And if you were subtracting something, that would move it left. But it's the opposite from what you would think. Why? Well, because. So here we have plus 2. So if you're adding plus, we're going to actually move that left. And if you have a negative, you're going to move that right. So for us here, we have plus 2. So we're going to move it left by 2 is going to be our starting point. And then we go up 1 over 1. Sorry, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, 2, 3, up 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until we get this graph right here. And notice from the original graph, you can see here that this thing is originally here, so it would originally be here, and we moved it up. Or it would originally be here, and we've now moved it left.